beautiful friends. This is Emily Gallagher and welcome back to another episode of Answer the Call. Today we have a guest that was actually on relatively recently, but I've had him on again because he's kind of my go-to guy when it comes to all things relationships. And the person that I'm talking about today is Stefanos Sifandos, and he was actually on episode 4 of season 2, which I will link to the show notes, because in that episode we do dive a little bit more into a bit of who he is and his story, as well as some really amazing dating and relationship dynamics that if you haven't listened to that episode, I would highly recommend that you do, and that will be available for you down in the show notes, but it's season 2 episode 4. But today I wanted to have Steph on because I wanted to obviously again give some more support and some more relevant conversations around the space that we're in right now in the world, right? This COVID-19 global shutdown, and also talk about how can we approach our dating and our relationship life whilst in this lockdown, whilst we're in this isolation, while we're really unable to go on dates physically and be out meeting people. And so I really wanted to support you. So if you're someone who is either looking to be in a relationship or you're already in a relationship, but it's probably more primarily focused at well, to be honest, we speak about things other than relationships too. So single and relationship, wherever you're at, this episode will be really valuable for you. But we dive into sort of what Steph's take is on the way of the world right now, some of the things that we can be doing to maintain our peace and our sanity at this time. We go into some of the tools and practices that he's using to stay grounded and calm at this time. There's a lot of really great resources for you down in the show notes as well to access, and we talk about how we can really, and I use the analogy in the podcast of being a butterfly in a chrysalis, right? And really being able to utilize this time when we're literally in our houses so that we can come out the other side better than we were before we went in. And so we dive into some of the ways that you can do that during this podcast, and especially as it pertains to your relationship and your dating life as well, and some tips on really how to use this time to connect and some ways to do that. And a little more about Steph. So Steph, firstly, I've worked with him personally alongside his wife, Christine Hasler, in their program Be the Queen, which is actually enrolling again starting in the beginning of May. So if you are looking to do some more deep diving on yourself and your relationship work, and you are looking to call in your king, and you really want to have that container to explore this work and this space inside of yourself, I can't recommend the program more. Both Christine and Steph are two really high integrity, beautiful, talented, amazing coaches and facilitators, and I had a really beautiful time in that program. And if you have any questions about it at all, or you're thinking about it and you want to know anything, feel free to just DM me on Instagram and ask me. Let me know you're considering it, and I can let you know any answers or share my experience with you in a little more detail as well. So if you feel free to reach out to me and do that, or you can send me an email. I'm just emily@consciousboss.com. So super easy to get hold of me, but I would highly recommend that as well. So Stefanos has been immersed in deep men's empowerment work and the exploration of intimate and sacred relationships, merging the best of Eastern and Western methodologies and philosophies to promote balance, union, and power in love. Using integrative techniques and methods such as neural empowerment, shamanic praxis, holotrophic and biodynamic breathwork, trauma release and integration, Western psychology, Eastern mysticism, and more, Steph has created programs, models, and systems to enhance the quality of your life, your intimate relationships, and in essence, bring you closer to your potential. So having worked with thousands of men and women all over the world, elite special force soldiers, Olympic gold medalists, some of the best fighters, and leveraging physical challenge as an opportunity for transformation and expansion, Stefanos has learned much about the male and masculine condition, and as a result, deep insight into the feminine and female condition. Having also traversed the depths of his own pain, suicidal thoughts, and fears profoundly, he has overcome destructive patterns and has faced and overcome multiple ego deaths. Stefanos understands there is a difference between culturally defined masculinity and sacred masculinity. He further explores what it means to be a good man and to be good at being a man in today's world. By restructuring and reframing his own masculinity and movement through the world as a man relating to himself, his environment, woman, and his purpose, he has discovered and created methodologies and innovative models for navigating the often difficult path of contemporary manhood and intimate relationships. Stefanos places his focus and energy towards evolving the nature of relationships in contemporary times. An advocate and proponent of sacred union, Stephanos believes cultivating healthy relationships to self, ideas, others, our lovers, and the earth will liberate humanity towards a new empowered expression of itself. Through a deeper connection to God, earth, and self, Stephanos realized the power of the human spirit. We often avoid challenge, fear, and pain. However, for the modern man, now more than ever, they are the tools for transformation that help us universally heal. So that's why I love to have Stefan, because he really has a beautiful, comprehensive understanding and philosophy and come from when it comes from relationships, masculinity, and how, as a woman, that really is a beautiful experience to be in as well, to be in that sacred masculinity as well. So I hope that you get some really great insights and takeaways from this episode so that you can support yourself and your dating life and yourself during this lockdown time. So let's get into the episode. Okay, so Stephanos, welcome back to the podcast. I am excited to have you back again to share some more tips, tricks, tools, insights with our listeners on not just relationships, but also the state of the world that we're in right now. So welcome to the show. And
Thank you so
okay,
much
so
for having me here.
yeah, of course. Sorry. And you are joining us from Austin, which I think is, I mentioned, but before we started recording, you and Christine have moved there, and I think you've been moving around pretty much nonstop together for the last 3 or 4 months. So, is it kind of
Yeah,
nice
4
to
months,
be
5 months.
actually forced quarantine, forced
Yeah,
stillness?
I'm not too much of a fan of the force part, but yes, it's
Yeah,
nice.
true.
It's nice to be in some more stillness and not be traveling so much. But I love traveling. I'm happy either way. But it is nice to be in that grounded, familiar routine. Because
Mm-hmm.
it was like 20, 25, 26 different beds over a period of a few months. It was just, it was just a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. And you have to unpack your
Yeah.
suitcase every time, or you decide not to do it and then you're living out of the suitcase. It's a lot.
Yeah,
There's the
yeah.
actual glamour of travel, I think, is a very different actual story. But I know that
Very
you were
much so.
saying, yeah, I know you were saying that things feel a little bit more chill in Austin, which is nice. So, obviously, everybody listening, like we are now in the time of COVID-19, global shutdowns, closed borders in the world, which is, something, and obviously the word unprecedented is being thrown around a lot, but it really is an unprecedented time, and one that I know in our lifetimes we've never experienced. So, tell me a little bit about the vibe that you're feeling right now, like maybe anything that's kind of relevant for you. I know you're still working with a lot of clients, maybe you're experiencing, you're getting the inside view on a lot of what the pulse is emotionally. What's your kind of reaction and maybe even your perspective around COVID-19 and this entire state that we're in? Do you, and maybe even if there's things that we could be focusing on right now, or even just your point of view on what's happening right now and what the world is going through, and maybe even
Mm.
how we can use this time for ourselves. It's a couple of big questions there, so you can just start wherever you like.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So what I think is happening in the world is a reset. How it's
Mm-hmm.
happening, I don't know if that's the healthiest way. It is
Mm-hmm.
what it is, and it's happening. It seems to be unraveling this way. Not to be resigned
Mm-hmm.
to anything and say, "Oh, woe is me. It's all out of my control." No, but there are certain things that are out of our control, and realistically, we can only control what's within us, and that's how we respond or react uh, or
Yep.
view what's happening in our environment. Uh, I'm a little shocked at what's happening and how it's happening
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the speed that we are shutting the world down in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just, I haven't seen this with SARS, with MERS, with anthrax, um, with,
Ebola.
and I know this is from what experts are saying, credible experts are saying,
Mm.
as long as they're not being lobbied or paid off. And then that's a real
Yep.
thing. I'm not being conspiracy theorist here. I'm being
No, that's
legitimate
a
when I
thing.
say that. It's a human
Yeah.
thing. Greed is a human thing, and that's it.
Mm,
What the experts are saying is that it is, 10x, literally 10x worse than the flu. And so I
mm,
understand the definite necessity to isolate and so forth. But just this shutting down of our socioeconomic model of the world and the
mm,
effect that's having on so many people, including you and I,
mm-hmm,
in not so healthy ways, and the speed that that's changing hour to hour, day to day, and laws that are being passed whilst all of this is happening in various
mm,
governments is very interesting. And so I don't want to
hmm,
make a massive judgment on it because I don't know the details and the intricacies of what's happening exactly. I feel it's strange and it's very interesting times, and part of me is quietly concerned, but the biggest part of me is
mm,
also very optimistic, and that's very clear in how I show up, what I'm writing about, what I'm thinking about, what I'm talking about.
mm-hmm,
And I'm not going to
mm-hmm,
lie, I'm fucking quietly concerned, and I'm also calmly preparing for as many different scenarios that aren't exactly happy-go-lucky rainbows, unicorns, and butterflies as possible,
mm,
um,
mm,
whilst also remaining really present. So, my lifestyle hasn't changed that much because I work from home, but the world outside me is changing a lot, which is impacting a little bit of me. And so I've chosen
mm,
to be more introverted. I've chosen to go deeper within, and both Christine and I
mm,
are spending far more time in meditation, stillness, and practice, which is really beautiful,
mm,
and giving me more context into what's happening in the world.
mm,
Again, to what I know, there's so much I don't know. There's so much we don't know. There's so much
mm,
misinformation and conflicting information. So we can only do work with what we have. I do think again this is a reset for us. I don't know to what extent we will take advantage of this as a humanity. I don't know if it's rock bottom enough for us.
mm.
I think human
Which is
consciousness and the
scary.
maturity of which is scary, yeah. So human
Mm,
consciousness and the maturity of human consciousness and evolution, I feel is at a point that do we need to learn by hitting rock bottom and oscillating between extremes? No, we don't need to, but we do. And that's where the maturity of
mm,
our collective consciousness is. And so I don't know or think this is rock bottom enough, which is a shame,
mm,
because it's clearly bringing up holes in our systems. Our hospitals are understaffed and under technologized, if that's a word, but
mm,
the innovation technology that should be in hospitals isn't there. The access that they need to, they're overwhelmed. Their beds are overwhelmed. The equipment's overwhelmed. Staff's overwhelmed. Like these are holes in our system. These are budget
mm,
allocations, as an example. Instead of putting nearly $1 trillion in military uh,
mm.
innovation and
Yeah.
so forth, why aren't we putting more in medical, as an example? Oh, there's a
Yeah.
$2 trillion stimulus package in the US right now. I don't know where that's at exactly. However, why aren't we taking a couple of 100 billion and putting it into medical, as an example? And I know it's
Yeah.
not as simple and as cut as dry as that, so I'm not that naive to think that. But I also
Mm,
see that stimulating the economy by giving people $700-800 each and asking them to go buy TVs and shit like that, or whatever it is not really
yeah.
going to, when we've shut down so many small businesses and so many people are suffering. Like
Mm, mm,
this is super complex, and
yeah.
I'm very clear that my opinion is just a fucking opinion in the sea of opinions. So um,
No, totally.
yeah,
But it's also, I'm finding it very interesting to have to, this really is bringing out a lot of different people's perspectives, and because everybody has this school of thought, so you're coming at it from your spiritual consciousness kind of standpoint and your level of consciousness and awareness and what you care about, and there's people that will come at it from so many different angles, and I think that's really what it is. It's about just being educated and getting different opinions, and also just finding out what resonates with you. And I was speaking with a friend the other day who's a really great business person, and he was saying, like the economy was due a recession. This has actually just sped it
yeah,
up. So it's not like COVID has actually caused this recession. It's just sped it up because
no,
we were already due for one. So there are so
yeah,
many complex, macro, micro structures and systems and things at plays. But I think like what you said too around like the policies that get passed and all these things that are like, I do think that there is some truth to the mass distraction that's currently been like the only thing that you can find out about right now is COVID-19. I mean, the only thing that, it's just that's all that exists basically in the world right now, because essentially we don't know what the world's going to look like after this happens. And that really is such deep uncertainty that it almost makes kind of planning hard, because we actually don't know what we're going to enter back into. Like, I had to come back to New Zealand, and I'm so grateful that I did, because in times like this, I just have a little more faith in the New Zealand government than the American government, and also
Mm.
have a nicer
Yeah.
place to actually be able to be outside and still work out and keep myself sane during this process. But I've got an apartment in LA, and I have no idea when I'm going to be able to go back, and I have no idea if the borders are even still
Wow.
open, and they're on lockdown for another month at least, and so there's just so much uncertainty. And so I think kind of coming back to what you said, because there's so much we're not in control of, and we have no clue really what is going to unfold. The only thing we really are in control of is ourselves, right? And how we take care of ourselves during that time. And you said that you and Christine are spending a lot more time in meditation. Maybe we can kind of jump into some tools and some ways that people can support themselves at this time, because I know you're also, really, you're a breathwork practitioner. I've experienced your breathwork, had a really amazing breathwork with you in San Diego, and so maybe there's
Mm.
tools that we can support people. And also, I know you and Christine, which will be in the show notes, and I actually put them in the show notes of a previous podcast, are doing a lot of free coaching and
Yeah.
meditation, breath works online, which is beautiful. And that's been a beautiful thing, as a lot of people are jumping on and sharing a lot of their tools. So maybe you can kind of maybe even share just what you're doing, because it looks different for everyone. But like, what does your
Yeah.
daily kind of self care practice look like at this time,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
heightened
Yeah,
time?
for sure. So yeah, so for me at the moment, Dr. Joe Dispenza is doing a week-long immersive, and
Mm-hmm.
poof, it's anywhere from sort of 2 to 5 hours a day of lecturing and meditation, and a good minimum
Mm-hmm.
2 hours of that is meditating. So
Mm-hmm.
both Christine and I are doing that, and that's a big chunk of my practice, obviously.
Yeah.
So listening to that, immersing in that, doing the meditations. My movement practice is a big part of it. So you've got to imagine, I mean, there's 4 or 5 hours a day of lectures and meditation, a couple of hours
Mm.
is at least 2 hours of meditation. Like this morning was an hour and 48-minute meditation. So it was a fairly
Mm.
long meditation, longish compared
Seriously.
to what I usually do.
Compared to what you
Yeah,
guys
I
did
usually,
in the yeah.
well, yeah, that's right.
Well, short compared to
And
those
then
ones.
correct, yeah. And so they're the crux at the moment of my practice is a movement practice. So when I'm not doing the Dr. Joe meditation, I just have my own breath practice and stillness practice, and I couple that with my movement practice, which is just exercise and training.
Mm-hmm.
I do my best to get in. We went for a nice 2 hour walk yesterday in nature, which was really beautiful. Discovering some parts of Austin, here, and
Mm-hmm.
some novelty is important too. So being in nature is a part of that whenever I can. That's fun as well. That's super fun to be doing
Mm.
that and be in that space. And I'll do some reading as well. Allocate some time to reading. Although I'm listening to a lot of lectures at the moment, so I may not read too much because I still have clients to service and help people
Mm.
through. And Christine and I are putting, as you mentioned earlier, we're putting a lot of free meditation still and preparing for all of that and the
Mm.
breath work that we're doing as well for others. But for me, a staple of breath work and stillness practice, movement, and being in nature is really important. And spending time
Mm-hmm.
with my beloved as well, and just intimate time together, not having to do anything, just being.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Surrounding
Yeah.
I think surrounding ourselves with as much love and intimacy and affection as possible is really important. Even if you're living on your own, there's ways to do that. We could talk about that later as well.
Yeah. No, definitely. And yeah, and I love all of that. And the reason why I kind of asked you for yours is because, it doesn't need to look a certain way for any of us. We have to find our own individual way that it
Mm,
feels good for us to take care of
mm,
ourselves at this time. But it's always insightful, and I'm always inspired by knowing what other people are doing that are, supporting
mm.
themselves during this very, very uncertain time. And have you found your you've been running your business any differently, or has that felt relatively unaffected? Like, because obviously you've been on a lot of calls with people, experiencing, the pulse of what people are going through. Have you felt any change in your business, or has it kind of been business as usual?
I want to say both. The business as usual part
Mm-hmm.
is I have many clients that I work with, and that hasn't stopped, of course. But definitely
Yeah.
looking at reframing, presenting new offerings during this time, which we've been doing,
Mm.
really helping people. So, I mean, literally in response to COVID-19, I developed which I gave you the link to, a free 7-part course, 7-part video course on dealing with anxiety and fear and uncertainty. And I just
Mm.
wanted to give that.
Mm.
And that's, they're 5 to 10 minute videos. There's an email, you get an email every day with that gets you in a reflective praxis and helps you focus and bring. There's many tools and practices that one can do that's in this mini course. And I wanted to do that and create that for people so that people don't feel they're alone and they're suffering alone,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
really get out of that funk and shift and create a new version of self and not come from the old and be in the new, be in the present moment and have intelligent hope about what's happening in the world and to themselves, and deal with some of the very real anxiety that people are feeling, that all of us are feeling. And
Mm.
so I have had to pivot in my business and will continue to pivot because I think there'll be longer lasting effects of this.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Christine and I are definitely doing that, and doing a lot of free stuff, providing free programs, free coaching, free trainings, to help people that are economically challenged right now, but also
Mm.
creating products and programs at lower price points where people can
Mm.
jump in, and it's very accessible to them, and they can even get more support and more help, not only during these times but moving forward and ongoing as well. So I've definitely had to pivot a little bit in my business for sure, and I'm
Mm.
happy to do that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and this is the thing. And I'm happy to hear that you haven't been affected too badly, because obviously that's been one of the things that's broken my heart the most, is all of these small businesses and these people
Mhm.
that are literally just shutting doors because they just have, all of these, everyone in hospitality, these small businesses that just, it's like you're just shut down for the who knows how long for, and that's been really breaking my heart. So it does make you see the power of the online business, and still being able to connect and serve so many people. So that's really really great. And I actually just want to pivot back for a second to just ask you about, before, when we were talking about what you feel like this time is for, you mentioned reset. And so I'm actually curious what
Mm.
you think we're resetting from, because obviously it's like we've all been doing life, a certain type of way. And you mentioned, having that, having to be rock bottom before we change. And we all, we experience that, right? You don't realize how much you love someone till they're gone, or you don't realize how nice it was to be able to
Mm.
go out and have a drink, or go to a bar, or meet a friend, or go to a movie, until you realize, or leave your house. And now you're not even allowed to leave your house. So all of these things we take for
Mm.
granted because we don't have that reference point. Um, but I'd love to hear your point of view on the reset, like what you think that we've been doing that we're being reset from as a society, or what you mean when you mean reset.
Yeah, yeah. There are many facets to that. So I think at a fundamental level, we have been extracting, producing, and distributing energy at a far too rapid rate than the Earth's caring and carrying capacity can handle. And so when we look at material consumption, when we look at the production of goods, uh, the, the over reliance that we have on material consumption is very intense. So this virus that has awoken the world in the way that it has, or has rather stopped the world. I mean, there is far less transport ongoing at the moment. I mean, there's you, you know non-essential transport has really been cut back immensely. So our Earth is almost getting some reprieve, right? People have less spending power over the next, few weeks, months, whatever it may be. So there's less material goods being produced. The issue is we've created a rod for our own back in systemically how we do life as a collective. So people are going to suffer in that process, and Earth's going to get some reprieve. Earth is our it is our foundation for existence as well. And so
Mm.
there's also an opportunity to look at this incessant doing that we have, this productivity, this accomplishment, completion energy, which is when done too much, it's hyper masculine. And so we get to look at the way we're evolving in the world and ask, okay, do we want to collaborate a little bit more? Do we want to be a little more inclusive, which is more of a feminine energy? So there's a balance there. We get an opportunity to reset the way we're communicating as geopolitically, as global leaders are communicating with each other. Do they want to be more transparent? Do they want to be more cooperative? Do they want to be more, again, inclusive? And so this is the type of reset that I'm talking about. People get to reevaluate and say, do I really like this fucking job that I'm in? Or am I just in it for the sake of it? And is it a blessing that I've been fired or let go or been put on pause? Can I pursue, those that are blessed enough to not have to be too worried where they're going to get their next, 3 months rent, and are they going to be able to eat? Those that have that opportunity to still be under shelter and have food get to really rethink where they want to put their energy. And that's a bit of a reset. And so we start to live maybe more authentically. And if we have more people living authentically, we have more happy people in the world. The vibration of happiness and
Mm.
joy and being content with where we are, it's a very different energetic and a very different expressive vibration to feeling guilt and shame and hate and despondency and disdain for where we are. And so that new vibration gets to be carried into the world. People are spending more time with their families. Yes, more people are separating and getting divorced, and more people are bonding at deeper levels than they ever have before. So when I say reset, that's part of it.
Yeah, I love that. And I couldn't agree more. I think that even just having, like you said, having more happy people that are in alignment, and what alignment is different for all of us. And so it's really pulling
Mm,
back. It's kind of like the matrix of feeling like achievement and productivity is the only version of success. And when we realize that that's been pulled away, and you can actually figure out, okay, what actually makes me happy, if all of the things I thought were certain and secure before actually aren't, and in these times really don't mean anything, and life could change in a minute. I think it really is forcing a lot of people to wake up and really assess and analyze, like, what really is important and what matters to me. And if this was my last go at things, like, how do I want this to look, and really ask those hard questions.
mm,
So I think it's really, really powerful from that regard. And I think as well, like, yes, this is a crazy uncertain time, and there's a lot of adversity, and also this is the time, this through these times, it's inevitable. Like, there is adversity, and the dips and the lows are an inevitability of life. It's not that, and I think when we start to accept that and know that if it wasn't this, it would look something different. Again, like, the recession was going to come. It's just that it's also come, that this COVID virus has also come. So it's like, it's not like, the world was just going to keep going as it was. Like, there is all of these checks and balances. And so when we can understand that it's not that things are wrong, yes, things are different right now and they're uncertain, and it's a lot of adversity, but also this is the breeding ground for resilience, for
mm,
building character, for really realigning. And there's so
mm.
much beauty and magic that can come out of it as well. And I think when we can, you know, have that mentality too, it allows us to eliminate some of that anxiety, some of that fear, and just be in a lot more acceptance of what is, which allows us
Yeah,
more energy, more space, and in that space we can also be constructive and utilize the time powerfully to create something magical with it. Because when we're clenched
yeah,
in fear and in that anxiety, it's very hard to be resourceful and be constructive. So and obviously um, that course that you've generously gifted will be in the show notes for anybody listening, so we'll definitely have that, because there are so many tools to support everyone during this time. um,
mm.
and if you have anything you want to add to that, you can feel free. Otherwise, I want to jump onto dating stuff.
No, yeah, let's get into dating.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so the original reason that we decided to do this podcast today is someone was listening to the previous episode that we did, and then was like, "Oh, you guys should do one about dating and COVID-19," because obviously, I. So for those of you that don't know, you haven't heard me on one of my podcasts before, I went through the course recently with Steph and Christine called "Be the Queen," which they have another intake coming up, and if you have any questions about that at all, you can feel free to message me, and I can let you know my experience and share that that, but I had an amazing, amazing time in that program. And you guys were so generous and so beautiful. So I can definitely recommend it for anybody who's wanting to call in their king.
Mm.
And, you know, so I was really in this motivated, inspired state where I was like dating and working on myself and just enjoying putting it into practice. And, now it's like, oh, everything's halted. So maybe we can kind of dive into, because you did share a beautiful um, article, which I can also link down in the show notes, about some of the things we can focus on during this time. Because, and I want to just share this, it's a little embarrassing, but I've recently been watching the show called Married at First Sight. I'm not sure if do you know about that show?
I know about it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, exactly, because you wouldn't waste your time on it. But it's a terrible show. But I kind of got hooked in. It's essentially just a terrible reality show where
Oh
people get
no.
married. They get married the first time they meet each other. So they meet each other at the altar, right? Hence why it's called Married at First Sight. But it was really interesting when I've
Yeah.
been watching it, and you know, a lot of these people that are on it essentially are, they're just wanting to find their person, and they think when they find their person that everything will be fine. But what I'm what I'm really
Mm.
seeing, and so clearly, is that most of these people have done no work on themselves, and they've really just worked on the
Mm.
assumption that when you just meet the person, you'll be able to have a really beautiful relationship. And so you're just seeing all their patterns, all their wounds, all their stuff just come out because they haven't done the actual work. So they've found the person but not actually able to
Mm.
hold the relationship. So I think that this is really,
Yep.
where you come in, because, and we spoke about this a little bit on our previous podcast, but this is such a great time that we could all be utilizing. If love and meeting someone or even improving your current relationship is a goal and a desire, then this is actually a really beautiful time where we could be getting more ready for that. Would you agree?
100%.
Amazing. So maybe we can share, like, because again, it's just like a perspective shift, right? Instead of saying, "Oh, I can't date now," or "I can't," like maybe you can kind of share what you would say to people who say, "Oh, I can't really date now. My dating life is on hold," and what could we be doing with this time
Oh, I literally
instead of
just did a
that?
post on this today.
I did see that.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yeah,
No, of
come
course,
out.
go.
Yeah, like dating during the coronavirus or COVID-19, whatever.
Yeah.
There are so many things that we could be doing right now.
Mm,
Take advantage of this time. We need to take advantage of doing. See, here's the thing: we are so addicted to our habits. We are so
mm,
addicted to what we're accustomed to, even if that's what we're accustomed to is quote unquote unhealthy or bad for us,
mm,
because we're addicted to the patterns and the familiarity of it. And so
mm,
when I say take advantage of the time. Like most of us, there's few of us that haven't been affected in some way, whether our time's been affected, whether our daily routines have been affected. So now we're not working from an office anymore, we're working from home, or some of us literally have 1 month paid or unpaid, whatever it may be, right? Where we're doing something different. And yet there is this thing in place that is recommended and some places enforced of it's called social distancing. It shouldn't be called social distancing. That's ridiculous. It should be
mm,
called physically
mm,
distancing, physical distance. And this is a real thing. And so, well, how do you date when you're on a physical distance thing? You get to Christine and I, my wife today, we got to know each other via WhatsApp, via
mm,
video chat, via voice notes, via messaging for 2 to 3 months before we met, because I was in Perth, Western Australia, and she was in California, San Diego. That's like 11,000 miles, 15,000 kilometers away. We had no choice but to just get to know each other. And that's what we did. And we asked each
mm,
other many questions. We got to know about each other's histories, complexities, likes, dislikes, pain points, shadows. Like we went all in and we were
mm,
just having mature
mm,
conversations about who are we and who do we want to be and where are we going and what's life about for us and what are our values and any and every question you could think of. So take advantage of this time. But that's not just in the dating. I mean, I'm going to go into some things that you can do in the dating in a moment, but
mm,
take advantage of this time to get involved in different practices. Maybe you want to start that art project that you haven't been able to do. Maybe you want to start that meditation process that you haven't been able to start. Maybe you wanted to start that fitness regime that you haven't been able to start. Do it now.
Mm.
Contemplate, also allocate time instead of just rushing through the day like, oh, I'm working 12 hours today and then I have a date at 7 p.m. and I have to rush to that and I have to put makeup on in the taxi or put makeup on at work and then or whatever it is, or have to bring a change
Mm.
of clothes or a different tile, whatever you're wearing, whatever it is. You don't have to rush anymore per se. And you get to contemplate about what you really want in a partner. And in order to know what you want in a partner, you've got to know what you are willing to bring into a relationship.
Mm.
That's super, super important.
Ah,
So this is
no, I
this is
love.
the this is the
Yeah. No, you
go
go.
on. Yeah, well, this is
I was
the
just gonna say I
advantage that
love
we
that.
can take yeah, that we can take advantage of right now. These are the circumstances that we
Mm.
can take right now. Doing that
Mm.
inner work, taking the time. I'm literally going to just read the list that I put together a couple of
Yeah,
hours ago
totally.
when I put this post up. Do your inner work. Take the time
Mm.
to know someone. You don't have to. So now that we're sort of physically distancing, and it depends on your circumstances, right? Let's just say you literally started dating one or two dates before this quarantine was in place, right? Then it's like, oh, what do I do? But then you get to continue. If there was resonance there, you get to continue seeing each other, but maybe via video. And again, you get to ask each other a heap of questions. Maybe you get to be creative. Get creative with how you spend your time. Maybe, you do a virtual happy hour or something. Um,
Mm.
and you do it together and you do it I mean, bars and clubs and other businesses are being super, super creative um,
Mm.
and so there's lots of different things that you can do virtually. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of video games. I mean, I like them, but I don't have any consoles or anything at home. But maybe you play some video games together. Maybe you watch a movie together, and then
Hmm.
you just have a chat a little bit about it after, and you maybe both eat some ice cream together virtually. Maybe this is just a
Mm.
temporary thing, right? Know that it's temporary. Maybe you read a book together and you read a chapter a day, and then you share what your takeaways were from that chapter. If
Mm.
you've already started dating someone, again, if you just are starting to date, you get an opportunity to really think about what do I want to put on my dating profile if I'm going to do online dating. How do I
Mm.
want to show up? Maybe I'm going to spend a little bit more time connecting with people on Facebook or Instagram that I feel, based on the what I'm seeing, I resonate with. And maybe I just want to get to know people. Maybe I'm going to spend some time just getting to know people at a platonic level. I don't need to rush the hormones. Now that you're not physically spending time together, you sort of remove the rush of hormones. Now that's a really important part of dating, and in fact, it's necessary. Whenever I'm talking about dating dynamics, I'm always advocating meet as soon as possible. However,
Mm.
circumstantially, right now, that's a little more challenging. So we've got to work with what we have, and you get
Mm.
an opportunity to step into deeper levels of maturity and consciousness, and you get to be more discerning and clear about, oh no, this isn't, without the interference of the hormones as well. Sometimes, if we haven't
Mm.
had sex in a while, or if we haven't been physically intimate with someone in a while, that plays a role in influencing, informing, okay, I'll spend some more time with this guy, but I don't really want to, but I'm going to,
Mm.
but I'll just give it another chance. You don't have to do that now. You get to be really
Mm.
discerning. Whether you're a man or a woman, it's irrelevant. You get to be really discerning. You don't have to settle out of desperation and fear. And I know that sounds
Mm.
oxymoronical and paradoxical, but it's actually not. There's more choice out there now than ever because people aren't so busy fucking doing like they were
Mm.
busy
Mm.
doing whatever they were doing, which is not wrong, but we're just so
Mm.
in our stuff. Now we're out of it, and there's more people out there in the dating world, and so you get to be
Yeah.
really truthful about what you feel during this time of uncertainty. You get to share with a date, yeah, I'm pretty challenged right now, and this is where I'm at. Or if you're not in the mood for dating because you're a little bit stressed, you just get to work on yourself. You get to build your own
Mm.
self worth. You get to stop compromising you and stop comparing yourself. You get to stop being desperate and think you're not good enough. You get to do the work. You get to go do virtual therapy, virtual healing. You get to do all that now at a deeper level, maybe, and start dealing with some of the unexpressed, unresolved wounding of the past. I mean, you had a direct experience of that over a period of 4 months in the Be the Queen
Mm.
program, where we did a lot of inner work on ourselves to prepare you for attracting healthier men in your world and being the
Mm.
woman that you want to be in a relationship, correct?
Oh yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm.
because you created the space and the time to do that.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of our circumstances right now. We get to deepen our
Mm.
connections in a different way. We get to accept where we are and that we may not be able to physically meet right now. And that's not resignation, that's acceptance. That's
Mm.
adaptation, essentially. We get to be
Mm.
certain with what we offer and what we want. And we get to, again, I want to be very clear on this, we get to choose to physically isolate, not socially isolate. That's
Mm.
super important. So there are some things that we get to do right now, and there's more as well. Like we get to date with discernment. And we get to spend a little
Mm.
more time really hearing about the person and seeing the effort they're putting in. Because if they can't put a little bit of effort in now on the phone, video
Yeah.
call or audio, what makes you think they're going to put effort in when you're dating?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the intention and the reason for that going to be? Is it going to be because they just want sex or short term gratification,
Mm.
or that they
Mm.
have an addiction to a particular connection style, or you get to really unpack yourself and people in this time. And I would be doing that. I would be doing that.
Mm. Ah, so good. And I think that, there's a lot of things, but, coming up for me, one of them being, I think, again, because people have been so busy and people, for example, have been building their career or have been busy doing all the things and not making a time and space for relationships. I think in this shutdown, especially when people who live by themselves or they've got all these things shut down and they don't have that person, I think it's probably going to wake a lot more people up to putting that as
Mm,
a priority in their life and realizing that they want that person and they want that connection because when times like this happen you definitely want that partnership or you want that intimacy, you want that safety of that space. So I think that that's probably going to wake a lot of people up that weren't creating the space for that. And again, yeah, doing this, the importance of, it's really just been so funny for me watching the show and just realizing that I used to think that too, like, oh, I just need to meet the person and then it'll all be fine. But the thing is that the person that you'll meet when you've really done this deep dive and you've built your
mm,
self-worth and you've really figured out what you want and you've put your boundaries up and you've decided, being discerning, like, you just will attract something so different. And they're all lessons and learnings, the people that you attract along the journey. But when you really, like, this really is a beautiful time because I think as well in this stillness, our stuff does come up. So what's coming up right now? Like, what is
mm.
bubbling up for you? Are you feeling lonely? Are you feeling sad, scared you'll never find anyone? Are you feeling, like, what wounds or what triggers are coming up in this time? Because when all we have is the time, the things that are coming up are beautiful gifts for us to really look at. And then we have actually what to work with and what to work on, because when I find sometimes when we say do the work, like, it's good to be specific too about kind of what that is. So really just kind of identifying, and maybe you even have some advice on how we could identify some of the things that are coming up, and that we can work on. But I think, like you said too, finding your hobby, starting the things, like doing these things that are going to build your self-worth, your sense of self, your conviction in yourself, your personality, your character. And actually, because then, and it's not just about finding someone or being someone for someone else, but it's about building yourself. Because once you feel so, like, I've never felt more amazing about myself ever in my life, like, because of this work and because
Mm.
of doing that work with you guys and the in-person work that we did, and a lot of the other work that I've done over my life. But I just have so much confidence in knowing, like, oh my gosh, my person is going to be so amazing, and he's going to be a different person now because of who I am than he might have been a year ago. And that's exciting,
Oh
right?
yeah,
So the more we work on us, like, that gets to be exciting instead of being scary, like, will I ever meet him? Because the better we become, the inevitability is the better our partner will become. So this is a great opportunity to build
yeah.
that.
Most definitely, most definitely. And that's a really beautiful perspective to take in this time, and that's the take advantage piece. Is take
Mm,
advantage of working on yourself, healing any past unresolved wounding. Do the emotional processing. If you want to attract a
mm.
quality human being, we need to be quality ourselves. We want to
Yeah.
attract quality experience. We have to cultivate and create quality experiences in our own lives. More often than not, that means releasing and freeing ourselves from the past that we are attached to and stepping into a new version of ourselves. And
Mm.
that requires patience, that requires practice, that requires doing that inner work and emotional release work that we all have access to.
Mm. Yeah, and you know, you guys as well, just in terms of resources, like Christine and Steph are running meditations and breath works like very regularly that you can jump in for free. So these kinds of things are really helpful. Obviously, listening to podcasts, figuring out where you're being led or curious at this time, and just actually diving a little bit deeper into that. Is just really great ways to support yourselves at this time and know you're moving, you know, whenever you work on yourself, you're always moving yourself closer to better everything. Because if you're a better version of yourself,
Yeah.
everything in your life is better. So it's never, never, never wasted work. And I think for sure this is the time
Mm.
to really, really identify that, because so much stuff is going to be coming to the surface. And it is an opportunity, unlike we'll probably ever have again, to really, you know, when everyone's indoors, when you're not missing out on anything, when everything's shut down, to just actually create that space to dive into that. And um, I love, you know, when you were saying as well, asking certain questions, and I'd love maybe if you had a few examples of, because when I was thinking about this, it's like, you know, when we open it out wider into just how to date strategically and be, you know, wise about these things. What would be some powerful questions that you would feel would be really important for people to ask on the outset? Like if someone who's really ready to meet their person, do you have any kind of recommended things that people should
Yeah.
identify on the outset?
Yeah. So you want to ask someone what their highest values are. So what's really important to
Mm,
them, and see if there's a match in
mm,
the mirroring. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have the exact same values, but it's
yeah.
important to share similar values and non-negotiables. Like, for example, you know, helping when you identify your non-negotiables in a relationship, and it's not necessarily creating a checklist, but your non-negotiables, you get
Mm,
clear on what you want to attract. But asking people questions like, you know, what's your relationship, what was and what is your relationship to your mother and father, you know, describe your childhood in
mm,
3 separate words. Tell me some of your biggest challenges and how you've overcome them. Tell me what you're most scared of.
mm,
Tell me what your biggest heartbreak has been and why. Tell me what your dreams and aspirations are. Tell me what your vision of a family means. You know,
mm,
what does your vision of an ideal relationship look like? What do you want in a relationship? What are the key things you want in a relationship? You get to ask these questions and then answer them yourself as well. There are many, many questions you could be asking.
mm.
Many. There's this is an example of some. You know.
No, I love those, and I'm kind of laughing to myself inside because I so never used to ask those questions. Like I think because I just so didn't even have the confidence to like be as assertive and clear as needing to ask those from someone. And
Mm.
actually, I asked someone on a date recently, an LA guy I went on about 4 dates with, but I asked him about his family relationship, and he actually said to me like, "Oh, we're not there yet," as in like me and him in terms of actually answering that question. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Would you, how would you, like, how do you know when to kind of like, if someone's kind of closed to answering those things, would you sort of think that was like a bit of a warning sign, or do you kind of save some of those questions for a little further down the track, or do you think it's kind of a good sign to know someone's willing and open to be able to talk about those things kind of relatively upfront?
The latter for me. It's difficult to
Mm.
say is that a sign for something because
Yeah,
you know there are other variables that could be impacting him saying that. You'd have to look
for
for
sure.
other characteristics. If he's closed off in other ways, is he taking a really
Mm,
long time to get back to you? Is he sort of
mm,
flaky?
mm.
Is he non-committal? You know, you have to put some things together because that could just be a very
Yeah,
sensitive place for him. But what would be
sure.
more appropriate is to literally just say, again, this is him being open and vulnerable and truthful from a vertical place. Is just saying, hey, you know, I'm actually working through some family stuff at the moment. I'm not super comfortable to speak about it right now. However,
Mm,
just know that it is something that I'm open to speaking about, but just not now. And if you could respect that,
yeah.
I'd be super grateful. Like if he said that to you, would
Yeah,
you
so
have the
different.
level of doubt that you did? No, you wouldn't. It's very different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, for me, you know, ask big questions up front. There's no, I
Mm.
don't know, there's nothing really to hide. It's not necessarily rushing into anything. We know we often don't have a problem in getting naked in front of people, but we have a problem in saying what our biggest fear
Yeah.
was when we were six. Like
Yeah.
most of us don't even know what that is. And it's okay if
Right.
you didn't have any fear, just say it.
Mm. Mm. No, I love that.
I think it
So
tells us a lot
so
about
good.
people's willingness,
What's
Emily,
that?
yeah? It tells us a lot about people. Well, people's reluctancy to speak about challenging or difficult what is can be perceived as difficult conversations, um, it tells us a lot about their level of willingness and who they are and where they're at
Mm,
as
mm.
individuals.
Yeah. Yeah. And willingness 100%. And then I think awareness too, because like if you haven't done any
Mm.
self reflective work, then you actually don't have awareness around a lot of these things, you know? But if you have, then you're a lot
Yeah.
more able to access that information because you've done some exploring for it on your own. And I think that in
Which
itself is
tells
also,
you, yeah,
yeah,
tells you a lot
tells you a
about
lot
that
about
person,
someone.
right?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. And, you know, if you're looking for emotionally intelligent and open and willing, able, you know, partners, then that's going to be a really great sign to take notice
Mm.
of. Um, I want to pivot a little bit, just, you know, obviously we're getting to the top of the podcast. I want to just pivot a little bit into maybe you can share from obviously your, you know, extensive work with men and then also obviously with women clients, because there'll be guys listening to this too. I'd love to just get your perspective on what you see the most that men want and what you see the most that like women are looking for in relationships, like maybe the things that they come to you and say, I wish my man would just do this, or the guys say like, I wish that my woman, or maybe it's even like, I wish women, you know, so that we can all be a little more aware of what we're really looking for.
Well, it's a great question. So often women come to me and say, I wish my man or men were more transparent. I
Mm,
wish men were able to emote with greater clarity. I
mm.
wish I have many women saying to me, I wish men would take the lead more. I wish men would be.
Yep.
They actually say less feminine. I
Yeah.
wish men would be more decisive. Um,
Mm-hmm.
with women, with men and women, I hear a lot of men come and say, "I wish women were less judgmental or more compassionate. I wish they understood me more. I wish I
Mm,
wasn't judged so much for my past. I
mm,
wish women could trust me more." And with all of these things that people say, the first we are the common denominators in our lives, right? And
yeah.
so, whilst we can't be responsible for how others think and feel and so forth, and for their behavior, we can say if someone is saying to me, um, "I can't trust you. I can't trust you." Yes, they may have issues of insecurity. They may have trust issues because or abandonment issues or previous relationships where they've been cheated on and so forth, and they're projecting absolutely. And also maybe your behavior in subtle ways isn't super trustworthy and isn't in integrity. And we get to look at that. We get to look at the nuances of our behaviors. When a woman says, "Oh, I wish a man wasn't so much in his feminine and would make decisions more," maybe the woman gets an opportunity to look at herself and ask where she's taking too much lead and making too many decisions and being too much in a rigid body posture that is
Mm,
not causing but contributing to the man that is already in that passive state being more passive. And he gets to look at that and say, I'm going to step up into a more decisive version of me. And so it takes two to tango. There's no, your
mm-hmm.
relationship is relationship to something. You don't have a
Mm,
relationship to nothing, and even nothing is something. So
mm,
when people ever come with any complaint, there's two components to it: the other person and the person that is speaking to the complaint. You've heard that adage. There's his truth, her truth, and the truth in the middle, right? You've heard
totally.
that. We've all,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's sort of that, but it's just us firstly taking responsibility for ourselves and not
Mm.
wanting them to do something else or be someone else or be something or be someone.
Mm. No, I
Yeah.
love that. And again, it's just it's self-awareness, you know,
Mm,
too, which I think again is at this time like is getting like is a perfect opportunity to delve more into this and become so much more aware of all of the ways that you've maybe blocked love or the wounds that you have or the things that
mm,
are, you know, are showing up for you, because this the only way we can become self-aware is by doing this internal work, and we have the most perfect time to really do that, to ask ourselves what matters, to ask ourselves how we want to show up in the world moving forward, to ask ourselves what we want to create, who we want to be. And that is a a powerful set of questions to be asking ourselves, and we have the perfect time to be doing it. To almost like we're kind of like butterflies in a chrysalis right now, where we get to actually, like, we're literally all pretty much locked in our houses, and we get to actually come out of this like a beautiful friggin' butterfly with all of this new awareness, new tools, new insights, and then put that into
Mm,
practice in the world when we leave. And I think that that's could be a really beautiful metaphor. Um,
yeah.
for us all to think about. Um,
Yes, definitely.
yeah, which is awesome. All right, all of this. I mean, I could speak to you about this for hours because I just always want to pick your brain on all things relationship because you're like my relationship guru. So, um, is there anything else that you want to, put in the space or share or add, whether it's about relationships, whether about this time, or anything at all that you kind of feel like would be anything else you'd like to contribute?
Yeah, I think we just need to temporarily adapt.
Mm,
That's all. I just temporarily adapt for a short period of time.
yeah,
I really mean that. It's a temporary adaptation. If it becomes really long term, it's a different conversation. Yes, that may
sure.
happen. I don't think it will. Um, and at some point, people will just say, "Fuck it, I'd rather get corona than not have intimacy," and I believe that. That's what I really think people would do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because for many people that have very healthy immune systems and are very healthily connected in their bodies, and they're not going to suffer deeply. And I
Mm,
think people know that,
mm,
it's just about not being a carrier as well. Anyway, I don't want to get on a tangent.
totally.
I just want to say,
Yeah.
be willing to adapt for a short period of time, and maybe do something different and and experience a different result in your world.
Mm, mm. No, I love that. I think it's a really important reminder that this is temporary and it gets to be something really beautiful for all of us. And if we don't push against it and fight it and just accept it and utilize it as, whatever it is going to be for each of us on an individual level, and yeah, fly out of our chrysalises with our beautiful wings at the end of it, and see what we're, faced with then. So also,
Yeah,
anybody who's is what curious about working with Steph and Christine and their program, I definitely couldn't recommend it more. And that's the kind of work that we're talking about doing to really get that awareness and call in what you want and get clear on what you want, and make the way towards that. So I definitely can't endorse that enough. And like I said, if you have any questions about it, feel free to message me, and we can put all the the links to the show notes as well. Steph, thank you so much for making the time and being here and sharing, your beautiful spirit and wisdom with us all. I really appreciate you. And yeah,
thank you.
anybody that wants to get a hold of you, obviously, I know you're on Instagram a lot. Steph shares a lot of videos about a lot of this stuff. So you could just go there every day and basically ponder
Hmm.
on something that Steph has shared. So we will link that in the show notes as well. Um, so please give your beautiful wife a big hug and kiss from me. And
I
I'm
will.
just sending you
Thank
heaps
you.
of love. And yeah, thanks again for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me once again on your show. I deeply appreciate it.
Of course. All right. Bye, guys. So I hope that you enjoyed that episode and it supported you in feeling a little empowered at this time of not really being able to leave our houses. And, a couple of takeaways for me of this episode were just really the importance and the power of utilizing this time to actually take care of ourselves, action those practices, those habits that we can either implement now because we have the time and we're spending so much time at home that we can actually do some of the things that we've been meaning to do for ourselves, whether it's creativity, whether it's fitness, whether it's wellness, whatever it is that you need this time to implement for yourself. Now really is the time to do that and to actually utilize this as a beautiful gift to come out the other side really better than when we went into it. Also, that good relationships don't just happen, and that we really need to do that work on ourselves, which, if you are looking to do that, that Be the Queen really is a great space for that. And again, like I mentioned, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions regarding my experience with that, or if you're considering that. I'd be happy to support you in that decision. But we really do need to become what it is we want to attract. And I've used to hear that you attract what you are. And never really used to give it much thought, but I couldn't really agree with it more, because the better that we become and the more evolved we become, the more self-aware we become, the more compassionate, the more reflective, then we are a match for something completely different. And so it's only natural that if we're not appreciating or enjoying what we're attracting, then the first place for us to start to change that is on ourselves. And so we have that time and that space now to really do that, so that we can call in and attract what it is that we want, even if it is on video calls and apps and things like that right now during this physical distance time. And so those are a couple of my main takeaways from this episode. And I could speak to Steph all day because I love learning about relationships. But I hope that has supported you and just giving you some things to focus on, to feel like you're moving forward in that area if that is something that is really important to you. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, I would love if you could subscribe, rate and review the podcast. If you listen to it on Apple, that would mean the world. Tag and share both Steph and I love to see that, and also reshare out with our communities as well. So stay safe, stay happy, stay connected, and I will see you guys in the next episode.